Welcome to the deep dive. If you were following Meta this week, say between January 11th and the 18th, you might have felt like you were reading about two totally different companies.
It was a very schizophrenic week, to put it mildly. We're seeing this massive divergence in strategy that really defines the future of the company.
Right. On one side, you have what feels like the old Meta just, well, crumbling. We saw reports of huge layoffs in reality labs, VR studios being shut down. The whole metaverse dream seems like it's being put on life support.
But at the same time, Mark Zuckerberg is out there announcing plans for, of all things, nuclear-powered data centers. And they're scrambling to double production of their AI glasses.
It seems like a massive contradiction.
It does, but if you actually dig into the internal memos, the engineering blogs, and the financial reports that we've pulled for this dive, it's actually a ruthlessly consistent strategy. I mean, this is the definitive pivot point.
So we're not just talking about a feature update or some kind of quarterly adjustment here.
No. This is a restructuring of the company's entire physical and energy backbone. They're shifting resources away from building virtual worlds, which, let's be honest, the market just wasn't adopting at scale, to building the infrastructure for what they're calling personal superintelligence.
Which brings us to the mission for today's deep dive.
Okay.
We need to unpack the three layers of this pivot. This new mind they're building with research, the body, which is taking the form of smart glasses, and the massive nuclear-powered heart needed to run it all.
And that heart is incredibly hungry. We are talking about energy consumption plans that, could rival a medium-sized country.
Let's start with that mind, the software and research layer. Because before we get to nuclear reactors, we need to understand what kind of intelligence they're actually tripped to power. On January 14th, Meta Engineering put out a really significant blog post about something called the UTIS model.
UTIS. It stands for User True Interest Survey. And for anyone who works in, product or algorithmic ranking, this is a fundamental shift in how social feeds are built.
Okay, so usually we assume the algorithm just watches what we do, right? If I watch a video for 10 seconds, it assumes I liked it and just feeds me more of the same stuff.
That's what we call a proxy metric. Things like watch time, likes, shares, they're all proxies for engagement. But as we all know, you can stare at a car crash for 10 seconds without actually liking it. You can doom scroll for an hour and feel awful afterwards.
So those metrics are measuring addiction, not necessarily satisfaction.
Exactly. Proxy metrics measure retention, but they don't always measure satisfaction. So UTIs changes the signal the AI is listening for.
How does it do that?
It changes the ground truth. Instead of just guessing based on your thumb activity, Meta rolled out a model for Facebook Reels that uses explicit survey data. They are literally asking people, is this relevant to you? And using those direct answers to train the ranking AI.
But does that really work at scale? I mean, usually when you ask people what they want, they say educational documentaries, but then they go and click on reality TV. There's always that gap.
And that's the most surprising part of the data they released. The engineering logs showed that by rolling out UTS, they actually got a 5.2% increase in total user engagement and a 5.4% increase in high relevance ratings.
Wow.
But the most telling statistic for me is that integrity violations, toxic or harmful content, that actually dropped by 0.34%.
So by optimizing for what people say they value, instead of just what grabs their attention, the platform actually became stickier.
That's right. It suggests that long-term satisfaction is a better business driver than short-term outrage. It's a move away from engagement at all costs to, let's call it, quality engagement.
Okay, so that's the recommendation engine. But there was also a lot of movement in how the AI perceives the physical world. I'm looking at a paper from January 15th about Action 100M.
Yes, and this one addresses a huge blind spot for AI models. Cause and effect. AI is great with static images. It can look at a photo of a kitchen and identify a stove, a pan, an egg. But if you show it a video of someone cooking, it's historically been really bad at understanding the sequence of actions.
That you have to crack the egg before you whisk it.
Exactly, because that requires an understanding of time and physics, not just recognizing patterns. So Action 100M is a new data set built from 1.2 million instructional videos. The researchers broke these videos down into 147 million temporally localized segments.
Temporally localized, so that means it knows exactly when an action starts and stops on the timeline.
Precisely. It works out to about 14.6 years of continuous video content. And this lets the AI learn the sort of syntax of physical actions. It's a prerequisite for any AI that's going to operate in the real world.
Which connects directly to the Shaper paper that came out the very next day on January 16th. That was about 3D shapes.
Right. Shaper, that's capital R, is the visual counterpart to Action 100M. It lets an AI generate high-fidelity 3D shapes from just casual image sequences. So you can walk around a chair with your phone, and Shaper can turn that shaky footage into a solid 3D digital object.
I want to pause here for a second because there was one more technical paper from the 15th that maybe didn't get the big headlines but seems really critical. The STEM architecture.
Yeah, this is a crucial piece of the puzzle. STEM stands for Scaling Transformers with Embedding Modules. It's, deep in the weeds of model architecture, but the basic idea is that researchers found a way to replace certain parts in a transformer, the basic building block of LLMs, to improve stability.
And when you say stability, does that just mean efficiency?
It means efficiency and accuracy. They reported a 3 to 4% accuracy gain on their 350 million and 1 billion parameter models. It just proves that Meta isn't only throwing more data at the problem, they're still optimizing the fundamental engine to get more performance out of every watt of power.
Okay, so they have a smarter algorithm, a better eye for the physical world, and a more efficient engine. Now let's talk about where this AI actually lives, because it seems like it's moving out of the VR headset and onto our faces. This is the body of the pivot.
And it came with a pretty significant cost. Around January 13th, news broke that Meta is initiating a major restructuring of reality labs. We're looking at about 1,500 employees being laid off.
And if you look at the specific closure studios like Armature, Twisted Pixel, Sansa, these are game studios. These are the people who are supposed to build the content for the metaverse.
That's right. And maybe even more symbolically, the app Supernatural, which was really the poster child for VR fitness, was put into what they're calling maintenance mode.
That feels like a capitulation.
Yeah.
They're basically admitting that the Ready Player One vision just isn't happening, at least not anytime soon.
Not in the way they originally bet on, no. They're realizing that the friction for full immersion is just too high. People don't want to be fully immersed in a cartoon world. They want the digital layer to sit on top of the real world.
Which is why, in the same week as the firings, we got reports that they're doubling production of the Ray-Ban Meta smart glasses.
Exactly. That's the other side of the coin. The numbers are pretty significant. They're ramping up from 10 million to 20 million units by the end of 2026.
With a plan for 30 million if needed. For context, they had to pause the global expansion because they just sold out in the US.
Right. This is moving from a niche gadget to mass consumer electronics.
20 million units. That's starting to sound like early iPhone numbers.
And it completely changes the interaction model. You don't go into the computer comes out into the world with you. The AI uses the glasses to see what you see, using all that Action 100M and Shaper training we just talked about, and whispers information in your ear.
But to make that useful on a global scale, they have to break the language barrier, which I guess explains the update from India on January 18th.
Yes, the Reels dubbing rollout. They launched AI-powered dubbing and lip syncing for 6 major Indian languages: Bengali, Tamil, Telugu, Kannada, Marathi, and Hindi.
Wait, just so I understand the tech, this isn't just a simple voiceover track, is it?
No, it actually syncs the visual lip movements. So if a creator records a video in Hindi, the AI can generate a Tamil audio track and then modify the video frames so the creator's mouth actually looks like it's speaking Tamil.
Wow. That basically merges the entire fragmented Indian market into one giant content pool.
It unlocks the full market for creators in the world's most populous country. And for Meta, it feeds an exponential amount of new training data into the machine by erasing all those language silos.
But here's the constraint. We've got better software, exploding hardware demand, and global deployment. But all of this takes electricity. And this week, Mark Zuckerberg basically stopped treating compute like a department and started treating it like a utility company.
That is the perfect transition to the heart of this whole operation. On January 12th, Zuckerberg announced Meta Compute. It's a new top-level division inside the company.
And it's interesting to see who's running it. You've got the head of infrastructure, which makes sense, but they also brought in Dina Powell McCormick as president and vice chair.
That hire is the real tell. Dina Powell McCormick is not a cloud engineer. She's a heavy hitter in government relations and finance. She was at Goldman Sachs, the National Security Council. You hire someone with her kind of profile when you need to negotiate with nations and regulators and utility grids, not just when you need to buy more servers.
Because they're talking about needing tens of gigawatts of power.
Tens of gigawatts by 2030, and they're scaling to hundreds eventually. To put that in perspective, a single gigawatt can power about 750,000 homes. Meta is planning an energy footprint that's going to rival countries like Ireland or Portugal.
The existing grid just can't support that kind of draw.
It physically cannot. And solar and wind are too intermittent for what they need. AI training needs what's called baseload power. It has to be on 100% of the time, a flat line. If the wind stops blowing while you're in the middle of training Llama 5, you've got a billion-dollar problem.
So they went nuclear.
They did. They signed agreements that were confirmed around January 12th for 6.6 gigawatts of nuclear power. They've partnered with Vistra, TerraPower, and Oklo.
Oklo, that's the company doing those small modular reactors, the SMRs.
That's right. So these aren't just your traditional massive cooling towers. They are betting on next-gen nuclear technology to sit right alongside the data centers. It's a full-on industrial infrastructure play.
It really reframes Meta. They're less of a social app and more of a sovereign entity, generating their own power to fuel their own intelligence.
And that sovereign behavior is exactly why regulators are starting to wake up. We saw some significant pushback this week in the governance space.
Specifically around kids. On January 16th, Meta put out a defense of its policies called Beyond the Headlines.
They had to. State attorneys general in the U.S. had just set a compliance deadline regarding AI chatbots interacting with minors. There's this growing concern that a teenager could develop a kind of parasocial relationship with an AI that might encourage harmful behavior.
And Meta says they have filters for that.
They do, and they highlighted those safeguards in the release. They also announced some upcoming parental controls where you can see who your kid is talking to, even if that who is a bot. But the tension is still there. Meta wants everyone to have a personal superintelligence, but giving that tool unrestricted to a 13-year-old creates a massive liability.
And that regulatory pressure wasn't just in the U.S.
Right.
Brazil took a shot at Meta's monopoly ambitions on WhatsApp.
This was a big antitrust development. On January 13th, KD, which is Brazil's competition watchdog, ordered Meta to suspend a policy that would have banned third-party AI chatbots on WhatsApp Business.
So Meta wanted to be the only brain in the room.
Effectively, yeah. They wanted Meta AI to be the one and only intelligence layer for businesses on the platform. Brazil said, no, you can own the rails, which is WhatsApp, but you can't exclusively own all the trains, the AI services. It sets a really important precedent.
It seems like the Wild West era of AI is closing fast. Speaking of which, we also saw the end of the free data era this week, too.
Right, the Wikimedia Enterprise deal, announced on January 15th. For years, AI companies just scraped Wikipedia for free to train their models. Now, Meta, along with Amazon, has formally signed on as a paying customer for the Wikimedia Enterprise API.
Is that just altruism or is it smart business?
It's liability management and quality control. By paying, they get high-speed structured access to 65 million articles in over 300 languages. But more importantly, they legitimize their data supply chain against potential copyright lawsuits. It's a sign that the industry is maturing.
So if we step back and look at the whole picture from this week, we have a smarter, satisfaction-based algorithm. We have a hard pivot from VR games to mass-market AI glasses. We have a massive nuclear infrastructure build-out. And we have regulators drawing lines in the sand on monopoly and safety.
It's a complete metamorphosis. Meta is stripping away the fat, and unfortunately, that means human jobs in the VR sector to feed the muscle of AI. They're betting the entire company that the future isn't a virtual world we escape to, but an AI layer that augments the real world we live in.
It's a compelling vision. A little overwhelming, but compelling.
It raises a question that I've been thinking about since I read the nuclear news. If Meta builds the power plant, owns the fiber optic cables, designs the hardware glasses you see the world through, and controls the AI that interprets what you see, at what point do they stop being a service provider and start being a utility?
Or a governing body.
Exactly. When you control the power, the perception, and the information flow for 20 million and soon to be billions of people, your terms of service start to function a lot like a constitution.
That is a heavy thought to leave us on. Are we users or are we citizens of the meta compute grid?
We might just find out sooner than we think.
Thanks for listening to The Deep Dive. Check your privacy settings, check your true interest, and we'll catch you in the next episode.